And Helen, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Robyn. Thank you for inviting me.
And it was amazing actually just being and watching your presentation this morning. You spoke a lot about your book, which is called
The Woman I Am.
And what's it about?
It's about a very interesting life, a very full, rich, interesting life, and a journey, one that I'm still on. But it was a life worth writing about, I decided.
Absolutely. We're not going to elaborate too much on your previous life this time. We won't even go back to the past life stuff at the moment. But just a little bit summing up, though, your life, you were born into a family that travelled and was in vaudeville. The age of 4, I think it was.
I was probably 5 the first time I don't remember the first time I walked out on stage, which is probably why I don't have stage fright. It's one of the few places I'm really comfortable is on a stage. Yes, very much so. What was the question?
When you first appeared.
When I first appeared. I would have been about 5, and that was the Tivoli Theatre in Perth, where my parents, they were doing a series of variety shows there. So I was on in the panto in the afternoon, and also the show at night.
Okay. And then, of course, you won something with Bandstand, was it?
The Bandstand Starflight International competition in 1965.
And then what was that the catalyst for?
That took me to the United States.
And you struggled for how many years?
Oh, about 5 before I got my first record deal.
And I read somewhere, I think it was your website, how many recording labels knocked you back?
I heard that, and I was very surprised because it was news to me.
Okay.
So,
It was something like 37 that I read, and I heard...
I didn't know there were 37 labels, quite honestly, but, things... I'm not responsible for everything that people say or write.
Okay, let's get on to that for a second then.
Okay.
How many stories have you heard about yourself over the years that have been just totally fabrication?
Oh, enough. Well, I was talking about this right before I came in here, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read in the gossip columns that I got into a fist fight with Bette Midler, who I had never met, at a nightclub I've never been to.
Serious?
Yes, I've read that I live in a city I've never lived in, that I've stayed at a hotel I've never stayed at. I don't know where they get this stuff, but one person puts it in print and then the rest say, oh, okay, and copy it. So,
Are you a fairly private person?
Fairly private person.
Given obviously your life has been exposed,
I would say,
you private within yourself?
Yes, I am. But this book was, I couldn't have written it 20 years ago. I couldn't have written it 10 years ago.
That's what happens when you get to be an elder.
I don't even know if I could have written it 5 years ago.
Okay. Because I'm curious, how does it feel when you see these sensational stories about you?
Well, I try not to read that stuff. I really,
Okay.
There's nothing you can do. You could, and there's no point in getting upset and frustrated and everything else. People think whatever they think. I'm not responsible for what other people think.
Okay. So you're in America. You have a young daughter.
Right.
And finally, you crack the recording industry.
Well,
After a number of years.
Well, yes, I got a contract to record one single, 2 sides, 2 songs. And fortunately, one of them became a hit, which was I Don't Know How to Love Him. And that led to me recording an album. And that led to me recording a few dozen albums.
Well, I think I heard in the introduction to you this morning, the presentation, that you've sold something like 20 million.
I don't deal with numbers.
And then 10 million singles?
That's a man thing, numbers. It really is.
Okay, let's go the women thing.
Okay.
Then you obviously did I Am Woman. Yep.
Yes.
Hitting around with the things here. I Am Woman. And you mentioned in your talk this morning about how you accepted that particular award and thanking God.
Yes.
How was that worded again?
Because she makes everything possible.
Absolutely. And you also said in your presentation this morning of how you really see the divine, or what was your wording for that?
I used a quote from Spinoza, God is not he who is, but that which is. So I see God as the ultimate energy, consciousness, but definitely not a man, sitting on a cloud with a long white beard.
Do you find that when people find out your belief systems, and now that you're a hypnotherapist, are they able to sort of go, sorry, Helen Reddy, singer, performer, do you find that they are unable to see you in that light? What's the reaction from a lot of people?
Sometimes, but I wouldn't really take on a client if they were, in awe
Yeah.
of who I was, because it would interfere with the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works for me in that they're more than usually anxious to please me, and so will go along with whatever I'm suggesting more readily.
Yeah.
So, it can work either way, but most people under 40 wouldn't have a clue who I was.
Okay. Well, interesting. It shows my age, I guess. Anyway, one of the things you also shared was about the age of 11 or 12. You went to Sunday school of your own accord, and you started questioning, what was it, in going to Sunday school?
Just what religion was all about, and why there were different religions, and why they couldn't agree on things, and it just seemed petty to me that there was a deeper truth in there that was being ignored because they were... Look, it's like if you saw Monty Python's Life of Brian, that wonderful scene where the mob's chasing him because they believe he's Jesus, and he's running away from them, and he loses a sandal, and they pick up the sandal, it's a sign, and then they split into different groups because they're arguing what the sign means. And I thought, that's it. That's organised religion.
So there's been a deep connection for you on a higher level from a very young age.
I believe, the kingdom of God is within you, and that you go inside to find your own truth.
Okay.
And people see, it's interesting. I heard of someone, her father was a mathematician, and when he died, this look of absolute wonder came on his face, and he spouted a mathematical equation, which no one wrote down, of course. But I believe that for him, God was the ultimate equation. An artist, I've had artists say, I'm looking at a painting and I'm going inside the painting, because that's their means of expression, and that's what they relate to. So we're all different in terms of whether we're visual or audio or kinetic, and so, we're all individuals.
Absolutely. Part of your journey has also included being visionary.
Well, yes, I was always a bit that way. Yes.
And you shared the hooly-goolies. You shared the dream you had before you moved to Sydney.
Right,
the
yes.
church.
Well, I used to tell the girls at school, I'm going to go to Hollywood and be a movie star.
And what age was that?
12.
Okay. So you've always had a sense of destiny for you. Okay, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're going to find out more about Helen Reddy's path. Back with you soon. Welcome back. So going into the break, Helen, we're talking about your experiences as a visionary, and I'd like to ask you more about those.
No, well, I was, having moments of thinking, well, what am I going to do when I get to Sydney, because I don't know anyone, and it was a big gamble for me at the age of 18. But I had this dream about 10 days before I left, or right before I left, I can't remember now. But I saw myself in this, I couldn't tell if it was a church or a recording studio. It somehow seemed to be both, which was kind of peculiar. And I was singing a duet with Peggy Mortimer, who I had met but I'd never worked with. And we were singing a duet together. I never did duets, and she was a soprano, so it just seemed the weirdest dream. And the first job that I got in Sydney was for the ABC at Studio 226 in Burke Street, which was a colonial church that they had turned into a recording studio, and my job was to sing a duet with Peggy Mortimer.
Amazing. And you've had these visions
Throughout my life.
throughout your life. And in fact, your book actually has at the end of it some prophecies, so to speak.
What I see, yes, what I see. It's not going to be as bad as people think. There's a lot of gloom and doom extremists hell-bent on Armageddon and all that. That's not happening.
Okay, well,
Tremendous changes, but it's not the end of the world.
let's talk a little bit about that, seeing as we're on that subject now.
Okay.
What is it that you'd like to share with us around some of these changes?
Well, we're evolving we're moving up a chakra, so to speak. And we're evolving from 5 sensory beings into multi-sensory beings, from linear thinkers into multidimensional thinkers. And we are becoming closer to our spiritual origins.
Okay, so what would you say around the Mayan calendar, 2012? Does it what you're seeing, does that link in? Because
it could, but you cannot put exact dates because the time as we know it only exists on this plane.
Yes.
It doesn't exist on the other plane. So saying something is going to happen at 12 midnight on a certain date, that's not the way it works. But certain changes have to happen, and there are major earth changes that are going on, and this is the 6th time in the history of our planet that these changes have occurred. But we will survive.
Okay. Well, how long ago was the last one? Any idea?
Oh, I'd say at least 10,000 years.
Okay, so it's been a while. Alrighty.
And when these things happen, of course, a lot of history just gets wiped. I mean, I'm concerned with how dependent we have become on machinery, because a lot of records are going to be lost.
Well, just on that, do you believe Atlantis existed?
Oh, of course.
Okay, and that was another case of
And
huge
Lemuria.
Earth, yes,
Yes.
huge Earth
Yes.
shifts and changes, and it all
Yes.
got lost. So it almost seems like it's a myth in our history for most of us.
Well, see, this is part of the problem with linear thinking and scientific type of thinking. If you can't recreate it in a lab, it doesn't exist. And, you know, that, for me, prompts the question, well, how much does courage weigh? What are the dimensions of love? I mean, there are things that simply cannot be quantified in a physical form.
So in kind of fast tracking with your life, you had the #1 hit with I Am Woman. You'd had a number of health issues. And also the doctor had passed over, Elsie. That had been amazing for you. And there was a note on the table from Elsie, who had passed over, which led you to the man who was your teacher for hypnotherapy. Can you share some
That's
of that?
right. Well, I'd always been interested in hypnosis and reincarnation. I mean, this has been a 50-year research project for me. And I'd reached the point in my life where I had done as much as I could ever want to do in show business. There were no more mountains to climb, and I was tired. I'd done it for 55 years. And I was having health issues which made me question how much time I had left, which poses the question, what do you want to do? What do you really want to do with that time? And so anyway, I had a psychic experience with lights in my house, and there was definitely, that's a long story.
In a nutshell?
In a nutshell, just that there were these very bright lights coming on in my house. And I mean, dead bulbs were glowing very brightly, and I did have, I can't say it was an out-of-body experience because I was very much still in my body, but I was so aware of being with my soul group and feeling this overwhelming unconditional love. And it was, for me, it was a glimpse of what's waiting when I pass over next time.
Because you have had an out-of-body.
I had an out-of-body experience,
when you were at
yes,
school.
when I was 11. Yeah.
Okay, so the note from Elsie, who had already
So
passed
the note
over.
from Elsie, Elsie had already passed over.
And was your doctor for a lot of years?
Well, she was the doctor who saved my life.
Yes.
She definitely saved my life, because if I had gone undiagnosed much longer, I would have died. And I used to worry, you know, what's going to happen to me when Elsie dies, because she had such somebody at her funeral said, when you're in the emergency room and you heard the distinctive click of her heels coming down the hallway, you knew you were going to be okay.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah, she inspired that sort of confidence. And so when I started getting sick again and she was dead, and I was really concerned as to what I was going to do, And she came through, and I asked her for help. She came through and sent me to a doctor who knew what was wrong with me and fixed it.
And what had you been diagnosed that was incorrect, and what was the true
Oh,
diagnosis?
they hadn't diagnosed it. I was well, before I was diagnosed with the Addisons, I was seeing for 2 years. He was giving me placebo pills, and telling my husband I should see a psychiatrist because I was convinced there was something wrong with me. I mean, I was dying, and I knew it, but
And what the reality was that was diagnosed? What was really wrong?
Addison's disease.
Yeah. And what was it that contributed to the Addison's disease?
Well,
years?
the fact that I'd had a kidney removed when I was 17, and they'd taken the adrenal gland with it. And it was interesting, a couple of years ago I had an MRI, which of course didn't exist back in those days, and looking at my insides, I understood so much about my life, because the remaining adrenal gland was dwarfed.
Wow.
So I was born with infantilized adrenal glands, which explains why I was a sprinter and not a long-distance runner, why I would have these bursts of energy followed by complete exhaustion.
Okay. Oh, fascinating. So then Elsie led you to
a gastroenterologist who cleared up this, because I've always travelled so much, Africa, South America, a lot of these places where there's weird things that you can pick up, and I'd picked up this bacteria, and I'd had it for several years, and it was just destroying my insides. But of course it wasn't showing up on any of the x-rays or anything, but this woman, she found it
and fixed it. And then Elsie also led you to Florence Henderson and her husband, who does the hypnotherapy.
Well, which was kind of funny, because I don't mention this in the book.
Okay.
But
this is an exclusive.
Yes. Okay. No, Elsie and Florence were very good friends. And when Florence divorced her husband and married Dr. John Kappas, Elsie was not very happy, because she didn't think this hypnotherapy business, I don't know what that's all about, that she didn't think it was science, you see. She came around. But the fact that she then sent me to Florence and Dr. John Kappas, and he of course ran the only accredited school for hypnotherapy in the United States.
And that was back in 2000.
2001.
2001. Okay.
So I was 60 before I got the letters after my name, but I got them.
And we're going to come back and find out the last 6 years of your life.
Okay.
See you soon. And we're with Helen Reddy. So 2001, at the age of 60, whole new life career.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite 60 yet. But,
Alrighty.
But yes, but yeah.
I've added
at
to your
time.
age there.
No, but I was 60 when I graduated.
Oh, okay. So what do you think drew you to hypnotherapy?
I'd always been interested. I'd been interested since I was a child. I mean, I had been studying, metaphysics for 50 years, and I had actually done past life regressions, even though I wasn't formally trained. I had done them, but I didn't. I wanted to have the legitimacy of a degree, and I wanted also to know more about what I was doing, virtually by instinct. So that's why I went back to school, and I'm so glad I did. It was wonderful, life-changing and wonderful.
Okay, so for 4 odd years now, you've been working as a hypnotherapist?
Part-time, yes, but I mean, I'm retired. I don't work full-time at anything. And I'm very involved in a lot of different charities and so forth, but I only see certain clients. But I work in hospitals with doctors, especially anaesthetists, pre-surgery, because a lot of patients are so nervous about the surgery. So I get them nice and calm before the anaesthetist comes. I plant a lot of subconscious healing suggestions, how well the surgery is going to go, how quickly they'll recover, and how their body is responding to treatment, that sort of thing. And it definitely helps.
Okay, and you have found that people spontaneously go into past life regression? with a number of your clients?
If that's what they're looking for, that's where I will take them. Yes, but that's not something I would impose on someone without their permission.
No, that's their own willingness to go
Yes.
there. So what would you say to viewers of the program who have scepticism, etc., around past life? What would you say to them?
I'd say you're entitled to your opinion. Please allow me mine.
Okay, and because part of what Conversation with Robyn is about is to help people see more of who we are. I truly believe that as we see more of our inner self and our connectedness with above, we start to understand the connectedness with each other.
Very well put.
And from there, peace, harmony, etc., can come onto this planet, and we know
Which
it's
it will.
absolutely.
That's what's coming. We
I
are
believe it.
in the process of attaining that.
Yep, I so believe that. So for people that are sitting there going, yeah, right, and it's never about judgment. However, what would you say perhaps for them to maybe start opening their mind to possibility and their hearts to possibility of exploring something like this? Now, words of wisdom, words from your journey.
I think, well, you have to investigate the subject. You know, a lot of people who criticise it really know absolutely nothing about it. What is amazing to me when I first started talking about my own psychic experiences, which I didn't do for years because I thought they'd call me a nut, you know, so many people would say, you know, I had an experience, I've never talked about it, but I had this experience, and then they proceed to describe a psychic experience. So it is so much more common than we realise, but people are afraid to talk about it because they don't want people to think they're nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. The next 5 years for you.
Oh, I'm still working on the next 5 minutes.
I love your answers. What would you like to bring into your life, though, over the next 5 to... So we're 2006, and we've got this
Yes.
big...
Well, I take one day at a time.
Okay.
But I believe I am here at a certain time for a certain reason, and one of those reasons is to help people through the shift.
Big time. Oh, there's so many questions. I have to say that in shows. There's so many questions. I get in trouble for saying it. Can you share a few more of your visions that are in your book or not in your book that are positive? You know, as you say, for some people they feel there's a doom and gloom in this change
That's
coming
negative
up.
thinking.
Absolutely,
That's negative thinking.
What is it that you
Okay,
can...
let me say something here.
Yeah.
What we concentrate our mental energy on grows. Whatever we focus on grows. If you're going to focus on doom and gloom, you will cause that to come about. The only way we can have a wonderful future is if we all imagine a healthy planet with a healthy people on it and that kind of thing. It's interesting, the film Twister, you know, when that first came out, there was a spate of tornadoes across the United States in areas that they'd never had, and like a lot more than usual in areas where they had them. And I really believe, because all those people were looking at twisters and the whole thing, mentally it caused that to happen. When the film was, released on DVD, the same thing happened. And when the film was shown on television, the same thing happened. It was followed by a bunch of tornadoes.
The power of the human mind.
The power of thought. Thought is energy. Consciousness is energy. We have so much more control over our future. We can't just say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do, I may as well go to the pub. It's about using your mental energy to visualize a perfect, happy, wonderful world, and that is what will come into being.
And the heart?
Well, that's where the emotion is, yes.
Yeah. Helen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robyn. I've enjoyed this.
Yes, I have too. I wish we could do a longer show with you, maybe another time in the future.
Hey, I'm not dead yet. I can come back.
Oh, I think you've got a lot of work. I don't think we've even seen half of what you're going to be doing out there. And I think you know that too.
Well, I take it a day at a time.
So you said. Be back with you. Helen, thank you so
Thank you.
much.